our sign here. So our first week, we asked the question, God, do you care? And his answer was, yes, I do. And I'm telling you to go out and tell others about me. And that's why go, which is our first statement in our mission statement. So that was our first question. This is a question we ask when life doesn't seem fair to us. When things have gone bad and things are just not right, we ask that question, do you care? And he says, yes, I do. Now go out and tell others. But then the second question was, are you in control? It seems like all the stuff that's happening around us, it seems like you're not in control at all. And this is the question we ask when we don't get our way. We're like, Lord, I'd rather have you do it this way. This makes more sense to me. And then the answer is, I am in control. And because I'm in control, I need you to love others. But this next question we're going to be asking today is, what about evil? Everybody in this room has faced it, whether you're a child, and I asked that question during Sunday school, or whether you're an adult. We have faced and we have seen evil. And we ask this question, and we feel powerless. We feel like evil has complete control over us. We ask, Lord, it just doesn't seem right. It's not fair. We don't have an answer for it. We don't think God has one either, to be honest. Let's be honest with ourselves. We often think that of ourselves and of God. Yet we know the stories. He created everything. He put everything into place. But it seems like that once he was done, he went and sat off to the side, and now he's just watching things happen. Sometimes we kind of feel that way. You know, Angel and I, we were traveling. Where we used to live in Texas, we lived a little bit north of town where we did all of our shopping and where our church was and so forth. And we were driving home late one night, and it's about a 7 or 8 mile drive from where we were to our exit off the freeway. And this car goes zooming by us, I mean, really fast. And I'm thinking, first of all, it was an HHR, or no, it was a Plymouth, the little Plymouth car, I can't remember what it was called. I'm thinking, can that car even go 100 miles an hour? But he was doing at least 100. And I knew something wasn't right, because it wasn't like he was like just going fast. He was driving fast and weaving. I'm thinking, something's not right. So I slowed down a little bit. He weaves around this truck, and the next thing I see some lights behind me. And I'm sure, yep, he's running from the cops. This is a bad dude. I'm going to hang back and watch it. And sure enough, he tries to go off to our exit. He decides not to. He gets back on the highway. Well, he oversteered, and he tumbled and crashed. I mean, he threw plastic and metal all over the place. So we're coming up, and we're like within, I don't know, less than a quarter of a mile from it, and there's no other cars between us. And so I'm driving, and Angel goes, let's go ahead and pull off. And I'm like, no, we need to go and respond to this. Regardless of what he did or what wrong he's done and why he's running, you and I are probably the best people to help him right now. My wife had been a nurse and an EMT. I had been an EMT. And we're thinking, we've got to pull over. So we come in right behind him, and just as we get out of our car, it lights on fire. So her and I run up there, and we start, I could see a figure running away. So I figured, that's the driver. Well, let's find out if there's anybody else inside. Sure enough, there were 2 people inside. I went to go help this one lady, and boy, as soon as I grabbed her wrist, she screamed. Her wrist was fractured really bad. So I grabbed her under the armpit, and I pulled her out. Of course, the car was laying on its side. And I pulled her out and I said, Angel, take care of her. You know what to do. So she walked away. And the other guy had a broken ankle. He was a big dude. Just then, another guy comes running up, and the 2 of us, we pull this guy out. And we get him away from the car, and the car gets completely lit up in fire. And within about 15 minutes, the fire truck was there. But you see, the thing is, though, we could have easily just turned off at our exit and gone home. We knew what they were doing, like they deserved it. Right? They were doing something wrong. I never heard the story. I never talked to the cops about what happened. They probably stole the car or they burglared something. I don't know. But the point is that we knew we had to do something regardless of the fact of what they were, regardless of the evil that they had committed. And so sometimes that's the response that we have when we want to. So we ask the question, what about evil? What about evil? Why is it even around? Why do we even have evil? And why is it so bad? I don't see Andy this morning, usually stuff here, but Luke is here. Luke, you've seen a lot of evil being in law enforcement. You've worked in the jail, you know what it's like. I'm sure as you were going through the academy, they taught you all kinds of stuff to prepare. He was sharing with me, he had bruises all over his arms as he's learning how to do close combat fighting. And how to, it was a knife attack is what you're dealing with, right? Because that sort of stuff happens even in jails and when you're out there. I mean, these guys, they're in the middle of nowhere sometimes. The closest help might be half an hour away, 45 minutes away. And there's evil out there. Even in our little town, sometimes there can be evil. And Habakkuk was dealing with the same issue. Now, he never overtly asked God this question. He never said, hey, God, what about evil? He just basically said, why are you sending those evil people here? Why are you using evil to punish the somewhat good people, the Israelites? Sometimes we have this idea that we're supposed to lead a life of peace and prosperity and pardon. Everything's supposed to be great, hunky-dory. You guys ever heard that phrase before, hunky-dory? Okay. God never said we'd have an easy life. We discovered that when we were in Thessalonians. He said we're going to face persecution. We're going to have trouble in our life. But it still leaves a question for us. It still doesn't answer the question. Why? Why? And then Habakkuk was even afraid to ask this question outrightly. Why is there this evil? Well, let me just give you an example, even in our own history. This lady right here, she's a Jewish lady. She wrote a very famous book called Eichmann in Jerusalem, A Report on the Banality of Evil. And there's a famous quote in her book that says this: "The trouble with Eichmann was precisely that so many were like him, and that the many were neither perverted nor sadistic, yet they were, and still are, terribly and terrifyingly normal." Rudolf Eichmann was a Nazi war criminal. He was the one that was basically in charge of making sure all the Jews got transported to the death camps in Poland and in Germany. When the war ended, he was able to get away. And he hid away for many, many years under assumed identity. Eventually, he was caught in 1960. And he went to Jerusalem, or to Israel, where they found him guilty, and eventually they executed him. But in the middle of the trial, as they were talking about the things that he had done, now he had been the result of 3 to 5 million. He personally made sure that 3 to 5 million Jews were transported to these death camps. And his answer was, I was simply following orders. He knew where they were going. He knew what was going to happen to them. He was responsible for those deaths. That he acted like it was no different than taking the garbage out. And that's when she made this statement, that this guy seemed to be perfectly normal, and yet he was so filled with evil. And we wonder, how can that possibly be? So Habakkuk is really, really upset. He's like, Lord, how can you possibly use these really bad people to punish your good people? Your people. How can you do that? And it deeply concerned him. He saw the Chaldeans. He knew what they're like. They already had a reputation of being evil. But you see, even though God was using them, they still had a responsibility to not take advantage of it. So we talk about these 5 woes that you heard, and that's because some of the Bibles don't always say woe on it, but in the NIV it does talk about these 5 woes. The word kind of means this: hey, you! Yeah, you! I'm talking to you! That's what it kind of does. It kind of just draws attention to, listen, it's you I'm talking to. I'm not going to talk to anybody else. I'm not talking to your neighbor. I'm talking to you. He said, I want you to listen carefully. And in fact, that word is almost always used by prophets only, as they're addressing people. It's never used in any other way. And they're meant to be a warning. Now, this warning now is against the Chaldeans. He's drawing basically these woes against the Chaldeans. This section focuses upon the foolishness of evil. Yes, the foolishness of it. Because as we go through, we're going to find out that there is evil, but there's consequences to it. In this case, God is addressing specific sins that they did. Now, there's a lot more sins that people do than just the 5 that I'm going to mention here. Jesus mentions some in the New Testament when he said to the priests, you are whitewashed tombs. You're hypocrites. So we're not talking about all the sins in life. We're just going to be talking about the ones that are specific to what the problems were for the Chaldeans. And the issue is, it's the pride. The pride is a universal thing. All of us deal with this. Pride is the trouble. But isn't it self-evident? I mean, doesn't it seem like, yeah, you should be aware that pride is the problem. And in fact, this is actually called a taunt. The word they use for this is, they're actually taunting. It's like people are going, nanny, 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 this is going to happen to you. That's kind of how the way the song was written. And it's funny because in this very first part here, he uses the words, indeed, because he has transgressed by wine, in verse 5, he is a proud man. And it's kind of funny, a lot of times we don't catch the humor. When we use humor in our language, we can understand it, but Habakkuk had a lot of humor. And this one, he's kind of making fun of the fact of this wine thing. Not that wine's a bad thing, he doesn't believe that, but what he's saying is for them, they were addicted to wine. The Chaldeans were known for their alcoholism, was really, really rampant. And wine was their big thing. But he also is kind of digging at them because at the very last minute, when they are overrun by the Persians, they're actually in the middle of a large feast where they were imbibing a lot of wine. So it's almost like he's making a prediction here what's going to happen. And he's kind of making a little bit of a joke here. So he's kind of making a dig. He's kind of saying this is what's going to happen. And so this question here, what the whole point is that these woes, the reason why he reveals these woes and what our response is that we're to disciple people, to teach them what God has for them. Just like the lesson I had with the kids. You see, sometimes we have that story of the fall of man and we focus on the evil that happened. Rather than what was the all-purpose of the thing is that happened was that they had destroyed the relationship they had with God. The good thing that God had for them, they ruined it. And so that's what I'm trying to focus on here, and that's the reason for discipleship, is to teach people. So the first woe is this: the plunder will be despoiled. So in verses 6 through 8, it talks about this. So in the same way that the Babylonians made fun of others and plundered others, their neighbors will one day plunder them. Just remember this statement, for those of you who have gone up the corporate ladder, which may not be many of you, that whoever you step on to get up there are the same ones you're going to see on your way down. A lot of people don't recognize that, and don't realize that. And you see, the problem for them was greed. Their problem was greed. And they focused on that. It was all about gaining, and that's all they wanted. It was going to be about 100 years from this prediction. They're going to fall to the Medes and to the Persians. They're going to lose everything. In fact, the taking of this plunder is almost as if they're developing a debt. Most of us have a loan on our cars or our homes, and we buy this and it becomes ours we get to use, but the reality is we have to pay it back, usually with interest. This is the very same thing that's being mentioned here in verse 5. He gathers to himself all nations and heaps up for himself all the peoples. That word heap is the idea of building up a debt that they're going to have to pay one day. So God's saying, yes, I know they're evil. They've done bad things, and they're going to come in and they're going to punish Israel. But I'm telling you, they're going to get their punishment too. In fact, they're heaping up. They're building up a debt that they're not going to be able to repay. Instead, the example that we should have is, so their problem is that they took spoil of the nations. Instead of what Abraham did. This is what Abraham did. When he was asked to go and make war with some kings that came in and destroyed where his nephew was living, when he got the spoils, he was bringing them back, all the peoples and the properties and everything that were taken by these other kings from far away. He did not keep those for himself. He actually gave them back to the lands, and when he met the priest, he gave a tithe of his own stuff to Melchizedek. You see, he knew that he was bringing justice, but he didn't take it for himself. And that's the same for us. It's the whole idea about doing what's right. And we're going to be talking about having a generous heart and a gratitude heart in February and March. That's some of the things that we're going to do as discipling as we disciple one another. The second woe is this. This is found in verses 9 to 11. The plotter will be denounced. This focuses on their self-exalting and their covetousness, their desire for other people's things. Even inanimate objects will have revenge on them. It's so funny because do you know anything about, how many of you guys have ever heard the 7 wonders of the world? Okay, maybe you've all heard about them. We have one left, which is the pyramids of Giza. That's the only one we have left. One of them was the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. This is mentioned here. In fact, there is no record, very few records of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, except in this scripture and a few others, because there's nothing left of it. The walls surrounding that city were 136 feet deep. And every brick that was on the outside, facing the outside, had the name of the king on that brick. So you can imagine a big city, how many bricks it took. Hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million, all had his name, because it was all about exalting himself, exalting who they were, building this great edifice all to themselves. This whole thing is about the idea of injustice. It's just not right. I'm going to share with you a little story, and this might be interesting as it comes out. Many of you know that I was a teacher back in the 90s. And I was a kindergarten, first grade teacher. Now the kindergartners, they would leave at noon. And then I would have just about 10 or 15 first graders in the afternoon. Well, I would have all the kindergartners lined up in seats while the first graders were doing their seat work. And they're all sitting there waiting for the parents to come. Well, I had with this one little boy that was, shall we say, troubled. And he was going along and he was pinching each of the kids in their chest, one at a time. And I happened to look over just as he was about halfway through. And I think it was either my aide or another parent was sitting right there. And then we went to move towards him, and I went like this and stopped him. Because the next person that he was going to do that to was Tavo. The little boy that was doing it was about this tall. Tavo was about this tall. And Tavo gave no room to anybody. And so I knew that Tavo would probably respond, and probably not hurt him real bad, but he would respond. And so, yes, I could have maybe stopped it. But he walked over there, and he went to go do that with Tavo, and Tavo went, poof. And that little guy, he rolled away. He stood up like this. He wasn't hurt, but he never did it again. You see, the idea is that justice. I knew that Tavo would not hurt him, but he would do the right thing. He would say, that's not acceptable, and he pushed him away. And this is what was going on here. Sometimes justice comes by the weirdest ways. And so here, God had sent these people to destroy Israel, to get them to do what was right. You see, the people and the nations, they know exactly how Babylon's getting all their wealth. They're watching them doing it. They're standing off the side seeing what they're doing. Nation after nation, they go and steal things. They're big bullies. That's all they are. And the answer is we stand up for what's right. And we teach that. And that's why we talk in 1 Thessalonians about justice and doing what was right in the face of evil. And so they're being denounced because they schemed against people. And not just people of Israel, but all people. The next woe, number 3, is the pillager will be destroyed. We are created in his image, all of us. Every single human that's on this earth is created in God's image. And when they're mistreated, regardless of what they have done, evil or not, it's wrong. And that's why we talk about the evil things that happen around our world. And maybe they were bad people, and we think that they need justice. But we need to answer, and we need to do it the right way. See, the problem here that he talks about is violence. That all that they went in and they came and they would destroy whole nations. And that's why Habakkuk, remember last week I mentioned, that's why Habakkuk was so worried. He thought they're going to come in and destroy all of Israel and get rid of them forever. And that was his concern. Today there's no sign of those hanging gardens. They were eventually punished for all of that. Even Jeremiah mentions it in chapter 50 and chapter 51, that those gardens would be destroyed. You see, the Chaldeans were all about glory about themselves. And they scorned all that was good of God. And therefore it says here, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of God, and as the waters cover the sea. In verse 14. The knowledge of God will cover the earth, because that's what's going to happen. That's how we combat evil. We talk about God's love. We disciple one another. That's why we have Bible study on Tuesday nights with Charles. That's why we have Sunday school for our kids. Because we want them to know God. And the reason why they're being destroyed is because they subverted the knowledge of God. Because it's all about themselves. Same thing as us. When we focus on ourselves and not on what God does, then we're subverting his knowledge and we're not doing the right thing. The fourth woe is this: that the perverter will be disgraced. See, the problem here is power. All they focused on was power. They were trying to seduce somebody else to come onto their way. And therefore, that's why it's so important for us to make sure that we do not try to do that. To use seduction in order to get people to go our way. I have a little cartoon here. Let me skip this part here. A little cartoon here. I'm not sure if it's going to play. See if it plays. There we go. How many of you guys remember that one as kids? Do you guys remember the story behind it? What's going on here? Lucy's doing what? She keeps on saying, hey. Is it playing the background over? Yeah, she's doing it all over again. Let me go back there. So Lucy, she keeps on tempting Charlie Brown. Hey, come and kick the football. And every time he goes to kick the football, what does she do? She pulls it away. Does he ever kick the football? Why does he keep doing it over and over again then? Yeah, I guess so. Isn't that right? I was not going to go there, Vince. I was not going to go there. But now that you've been there, no. He just did it over and over again. He never learned his lesson. She was able to seduce him to do something that he knew there was no chance of ever happening. But maybe there was a little bit of hope that one day he'd be able to kick that football. And that's what the Chaldeans were doing. They would seduce people and then they would utterly destroy them. And you'd think that people would learn their lesson, like, do not make friends with the Chaldeans because all they're going to do is pull the football away. You see, God will produce wrath upon them. He will strip them. And that's why we're going to be talking about Proverbs and to live a right way later on this year. And you see, Babylon, they took advantage of God's people. They stole from them. They took their power. They seduced them to try to even come their way. At this time, actually, the king that was there in power, Jehoiachin, was actually he was kind of like a surrogate leader from Babylon. He was already had an agreement from Babylon. They'd already kind of tricked him to do it already. But within 20 years, Babylon was just going to come in and take everybody. And they even showed him all the wealth that was in the temple. And I mean, it was just not a good thing. But they just had a way of doing it. So the fifth woe was this: the polytheist, those who believe in idols, will be deserted. And this is the final and worst woe of all. Because they chose not to follow God, but to follow an idol. And it's actually, he makes fun of them again. If you really see this, it's like, why are you talking to something that doesn't breathe? Why are you asking them to do something when they're just something that you made? Do you not see the logic here, people? Come on. It's really simple. It was something you put together your hands and now you're praying to it? So he's actually kind of making fun of them. But you see, a life of faith is the only thing that will lead to joy, fulfillment, and reward. And in John 10, 7 through 10, it says this: Then Jesus said to them, Most assuredly I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. Anyone who enters by me, he will be saved, and will go in and find good pasture. The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come that they might have life, and that more abundantly. That's the good stuff. The good stuff that we're supposed to have, that the enemy does not want us to have. He does not want us to have abundant life. But God does. So God answers. So because they served other gods, that's why they're being punished. So God answers. And the question is, we ask, where is God? Where is he? Why is the earth commanded to be silent? And why does this knowledge help me? It's actually interesting, he uses the word, sometimes we have words that, when you say the word, like word icky. Even the word icky sounds icky. Right? It's like icky, ooh, that's icky. There's actually a Hebrew word in here, it's the word hush, the word for silence. It actually kind of makes, when you hear that word, you're like, okay, we need to be silent. Hush before God. You see, that's what we need. When there's evil all around, we need to be hush before God. Because we don't have the answers. I don't have the answers. I told you last week that this week and last week would be really hard to hear because I don't have the answers for evil. Evil's evil. That's the bad thing about it. But in chapter 2, verse 4 and 2:20, he gives the answer. And the answer is this: the just shall live by faith. And in 2:20 it says, missing page. There. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep hush before him. So the just will live by faith, but those who don't, they'll die. Behold the proud, his soul is not upright in him, but the just shall live by faith. I hate to say that, but that's the answer, folks. The answer is just to live by faith. Live right before him. Evil's going to happen. It's going to happen all around us. We won't always have an answer for it. And we see it every single day, don't we? Especially those of us who have phones and we get on our news and we look at the news or on Google. We see it all the time. You see, evil abounds. But evil will not triumph in the end. That is the promise that he does have. And in fact, Habakkuk hears that from God here. You see, you just can't get rid of it. But we do know this: God is still God. So just hush before him. Just hush. And stand before his awe. You know, I know that we're right in the middle of football season. So I thought I'd pull a good quote from a man. I don't know if you know who Dabo Swinney is. He's the coach of the Clemson Tigers. He won the national championship this year. He's a very strong and dedicated Christian. And he said this: bad things happen in life, but it's how you respond that counts. So how do we respond? We talked about we need to go, we need to love. Now number 3 is we need to disciple. That's our job. We go out and teach others. Come Tuesday nights to the Bible study. That's how you can be discipled. Go watch Jesse as he goes and coaches the young boys as they're wrestling. I got to see them on Tuesday. Watch Brandon and Andy as they coach in archery. It's fun to watch them. Watch Amber and Katie as they teach Sunday school, and Kari and the ladies as they do their bowling nights. They're discipling, spending time with others and teaching them. Or if you want to, come over to Dolores' house and she'll teach you how to play pinochle like she did Angel and I. We had such a great time that night. But that's discipling. Because obviously as we're playing cards, we're talking about life, we're speaking into each other's life, we're learning from each other. She's teaching me and we're teaching her, and that's how we disciple one another. We spend time with one another. That's what we do. That's life. So that's it. That's our answer. Be content, care, comprehend or know God's word, be concerned for others, and be committed to his stuff. That's life doing together. That's the guiding principle. So go, love people, and disciple them. Now remember, this requires that we do this in church, the things I mentioned, out of church, in our homes, Sunday mornings. This is how we learn from one another and disciple one another. I want to close with this. The kids each week are getting this at home as well. So I asked them today, what is the evil that troubles you the most? And the kids said, being mean to each other. That was their big thing, because that's what their life is, right? That's what concerns them. So when you get home, ask them about it, and then maybe share with them the thing that concerns you most about the evil that you see. And I want to leave you with this last quote from, again, Dabo Sweeney. Because I'll be accountable to God for this. What did I do with all those kids he gave me? You see, for him, it's great that they won a national championship. But ultimately, this is what it was about. What did I do to build his kingdom? As I'm teaching those kids how to pull back the string on a bow. As I'm teaching somebody how to play pinochle. As I'm doing a tournament, fishing tournament this weekend, spending time with kids and sharing and showing them some good, healthy things that they can do in life. Say, clean out my walkway so I can walk to church without having to get in the snow. That's the going and the loving and the discipling that we as a church must do. So Father, we just thank you. We give you the glory. We give you the praise. We see the evil all around us. It still doesn't make sense. We don't always know why, and we're going to have questions until we die. But we do know you're in control. We do know that you're going to punish it. He says so right in your word here and many other places. So just help us at those times when we're really struggling and we don't know why. Help us to continue to live by faith, to trust in you, to love you with all of our heart, and to share that truth with others. We thank you and we give you glory and praise. Amen.
Exile.